I welcome you heartily here to our congregation. I've been the pastor here since 2019. Before we begin tonight, note that restrooms and a drinking fountain are available if you exit the congregation to the rear and turn to the right, or from the side and turn down to the left. You'll find restrooms and a drinking fountain if you need it. But we're most pleased to welcome the Reverend Juhana Pohjola with us today. Dr. Pohjola is a bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Mission Diocese of Finland since, as I have it, August 1st, 2021. He, along with Finnish Member of Parliament, Dr. Päivi Räsänen, were charged with incitement against a group of people for the publication of a 2004 booklet which defends the biblical Christian understanding of human sexuality. One tract in a series of publications of their church body. This was one tract in a series of many tracts, incited the attention of the authorities. They were acquitted on March 30th, 2022. In his presentation to us today, Reverend Pohjola, his presentation is entitled Faith Speech on Trial in Finland. Please join me in giving Reverend Pohjola a proper Lancaster County welcome. Please.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply honored to be here, and thank you for giving time of your week. It's Monday evening. Good morning to you alone, but instead you are coming to hear story from Finland. Have you everybody been to Finland? Oh, wow, that's something. So what on earth is happening in Finland, on the other side of the world? Well, I will tell you my story, and then hopefully if you want to ask something, then we can continue from there. So on the 24th of January 22, Mrs. Räsänen, Member of Parliament, former Interior Minister in Finland, and myself were summoned to the Helsinki District Court. And my father was in that particular court decades as a judge, but now he's retired. The description of my alleged offense was following. Juhana Pohjola, that is me, has made and maintained available to the public opinions and allegations defaming and insulting homosexual as group on the basis of their sexual orientation. After 6 hours in the courtroom, 4:15 p.m., the prosecutor asked me the final question: do you follow the Finnish law or the words of the Bible? For the first time in my country, a Lutheran pastor, or any pastor, was charged with hate crimes. How did a Lutheran bishop whose duty is to be guardian of the faith end up to a courthouse to answer such a question? How did I become involved in a case that Alliance Defending Freedom lawyer Paul Coleman has called modern-day heresy trial? I have been charged as the editor-in-chief for publishing and distributing this pamphlet written by Mrs. Räsänen. Male and female, he created them. Homosexual relationships challenge the Christian concept of humanity. Now I wish I could tell you a great story that how we were courageous and started to go against ungodly practices and ideologies by publishing this shocking pamphlet with huge media coverage. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, because this is not what happened. The story goes like this. I graduated from the University of Helsinki, and I came here to US, to Indiana, Fort Wayne, Concordia Theological Seminary, 1997. And when I went back, eventually I was ordained 99, and I started a confessional Lutheran mission congregation in year 2000, in the midst of very liberal established church. So we were kind of the small remnant of the traditional Lutheran understanding of Bible and catechisms and so forth. So I wanted to offer the faithful remnant the gifts of Christ in the divine service from the altar and the pulpit, and gather them to a family-like community in an individualistic society. So with the support of the Lutheran Heritage Foundation, which is placed in Detroit, and is doing a great job all over the world, translating material. Maybe some of you know Lutheran Heritage Foundation work. I started a booklet series, because nowadays who wants to read thick books, you know, but booklets, that's okay. So I published on worship, Lord's Supper, baptism, justification, sanctification, all these good, biblical themes. But then in 2003, there was a pressure in the society and in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland, which is you would call a state church or established church, to open up marriage for same-sex couples. And then I asked this fine Lutheran lady, Member of Parliament, medical doctor Mrs. Räsänen, to write an article about this issue. It deals with kind of medical, political, and also biblical aspects. And she was in a hurry, but she said, "I will do it." Well, if she only had known, she had said many times, "I wish I had known. I would have done such much better job." But here it is, and this booklet was one among the others. I'm not a lawyer, maybe there's some legal expertise present here tonight, but I have understood that intention weighs in a criminal case. So our intention was just Lutheran catechesis. This series was later put on our web page without any fuss, but little did we know. In summer 2019, now we jump 15 years, and that's a long time for you. And Mrs. Räsänen, summer 2019, made a question to the established Lutheran Church about its role as an official sponsor in the Helsinki Pride Parade. She tweeted a photo of Romans 1, which deals with the question of human sexuality, and asked how is in accordance with the teaching of the Church and the Bible that you boast of sin and shame. This tweet caused an uproar in media. I followed it from the distance. I saw the headlines and so forth, and I said to my bishop then, I wish we could some way support Mrs. Räsänen in this fight. Little did I know. In fall 2019, I got a letter from Helsinki Police Department. A man had pressed charges against me. By the way, he's a theologian. And Mrs. Räsänen arguing that pamphlet found on our webpage was discriminatory towards homosexuals. Now, we were caught by surprise since it had been there over 15 years. However, the police in charge decided to drop the case. He pointed out that there's no precise legal definition what hate speech is. And I mean, you cannot find it, at least in Europe. It's a vague term, and that's why you can use it in a different way. According to the detective inspector, this pamphlet was not an expression of opinion where a certain group is threatened, defamed, or insulted, which are vague but legal criteria for hate speech in Finland. If there was offense for the reader, it was not in the words, that we used some kind of language that is, but it was the subject matter. He considered it to be a religiously motivated writing which belongs under the constitutional protection of freedom of speech and religion. And then he urged the complainant to engage in a public debate with us if he disagrees with our writing. And isn't this how a free society works? Different opinions discussed in a public arena. He concluded that if some biblical teaching as such is seen hateful speech, then distributing Bibles would have to be criminal as well. Well, that was a strong argument, and I was, of course, pleased with that. And I thought, case closed. I was astonished to see that in a way it went to the police, but now it's closed. However, the decision made by the detective inspector went automatically to the table of the General Prosecutor's Office. On the Reformation Day, 31st of October 2019, the Prosecutor General of Finland announced that she has ordered a preliminary investigation on the subject matter. And this was a huge surprise and a stark blow. We were suspected of being guilty of incitement to hatred against the group. I was summoned for the first time in my life to the Helsinki Police Department for preliminary investigation, February 20. The interrogation took over 5 hours. It was cordial but tough. Last question was, are you willing to take the pamphlet away from your website in 2 weeks? I said no. There's no legal and theological reason to do it. If I had said yes, and if Mrs. Räsänen had said yes, the case would have been most probably settled right on the spot. Mrs. Räsänen has been 3 times in the preliminary investigation. And they have went through the Romans and so forth. So she's speaking already about the Bible study group in the Helsinki Police Department. The Prosecutor General has publicly said that she will give special attention to the hate speech cases. And it has been her ideologically motivated campaign. Although she says, and I'm sure that she is honest, that she wants to maintain the classical Western liberal freedoms of speech and religion grounded on our Constitution, but she interprets these fundamental freedoms in the light of the Equality and Discrimination Acts. So they are also basic rights. So you have freedom of religion and speech here, and then you have Equality and Discrimination Acts. And how do you balance these? And that's why some legal professor says our case is a candidate for lawyers, because it's how do you balance these 2 things? Well, the tendency is to interpret more broadly vague terms like defaming and insulting speech at the expense of the free speech. And I have to tell you that Mrs. Räsänen has been 30 years as a Member of Parliament, and she was passing the law herself 2011 when the so-called hate speech acts were expanded to include sexual minorities. So she accepted in the Parliament a particular law which is now used against herself. So there was no idea that it could be used in that meaning. So it was not a surprise, but still a shock when April 21, prosecutor announced that she will press charges. So we were summoned to the Helsinki District Court, what was called Bible on trial case, with huge media coverage. Mrs. Räsänen came to the courthouse with the Bible, and there were dozens reporters, and it was flashlights, and it was big show. Oh, she's the main character here, so remember. So I will share you with some moments from the court. But before, I just want to point out that I have high respect on the Finnish legal system. In fact, Finland on EU level promotes the rule of the law principle, and we boast that we are among the least corrupt countries in the world. I mean, if you check any statistic of comparing countries, freedom of the press, corruption or anything, Finland is always top 10, even top 3 or top 5. So my point is not to show what can happen in a totalitarian country with failed legal system, but what can take place in a free democratic country with clear stated basic rights grounded on the Constitution. So if this can happen in Finland, it can happen and is happening everywhere else. That's the point. State prosecutor claimed that the pamphlet included opinions and allegations defaming and insulting homosexuals as a group on the basis of their sexual orientation. Maximum penalty for that is 2 years prison, and that's under the section Crimes Against Humanity. I mean, that was after Holocaust was that put in the legal system, Crimes Against Humanity. But so it's in that section. But the prosecutor demanded that we should be fined, me and the publisher, Lutheran Foundation, approximately $15,000, and then tweet and some parts of the booklets would be taken away from the public. Interesting is that in this criminal case, there's no victim. No one has claimed that this publication has caused harm them. So it's not like the baker case here, the can you bake a cake or not bake a cake. But that NGO or company or something like private is, accusing you. But this is state prosecutor alleges that not only some parts, but the whole pamphlet is homophobic material which promotes discrimination against homosexuals. So it is up to states to act in order to protect fragile sexual minority. No one has said that that we are offended, that this has caused this and this harm, but it's now the prosecutor says it's the state must act. In the court, she made the case that this kind of material has negative impact on rainbow youth, and it can cause them not only distress but suicidal thoughts. The very problematic aspect was that prosecutor was claiming that Mrs. Räsänen had said something in this pamphlet and in a radio show that she hadn't said, like homosexuals are not created by God. And actually Mrs. Räsänen got a letter from a German professor who said that you are worse than Nazis because you are denying that homosexuals are created by God. Well, Mrs. Räsänen had never said that. Of course, we are all created by God. But you see that there was bad things going on. No, it felt surreal in the court that we were accused that we somehow deny human dignity of certain group, which we denied. In the pamphlet and in the hearings and in the police investigation, we repeat repeatedly. First, we are all created as image of God. We are all equal and share the inherent dignity, no matter what you do with your sexuality. 2, we are all part of the fallen human race, and therefore we are all sinners. Homosexuals are not greater sinners than all the others, but nevertheless it is sinful to live in a homosexual relationship. And that's why I a little bit hate to speak only about homosexual sins. All our sexuality is broken. We could talk about in front of God, we confess our sins on 6th commandments. But of course now this is, at least in 2000, the beginning it was a hot issue, now it's the transgender issues are more on the topic. But we are all sinners, but it is sinful to live in a homosexual relationships. Third, we are all loved by God and atoned by Jesus Christ on the cross. The grace of our Lord belongs to everybody. And four, we are all called to live according to the natural and divine order. According to the Christian view, sexual life is meant to be in the confines of marriage, for life between one man and one woman, a complementary union meant to protect the triple bond of mother, father, and child. Marriage reflects the equal and complementary loving union of the Holy Trinity. So, however, the prosecutor did not accept the distinction that not only we, but church throughout the world has made. We confess the God-given dignity, value, and human rights of those who identify them as homosexuals. But at the same time, we also call homosexual acts sinful. You have to repent them, and in discordance with the created order, because we are created male and female. And the will of God as found in the Bible. According to the prosecutor, we deny human dignity of those who have same-sex attraction if we reject homosexual acts. She gave in the courtroom as an unlawful example what she called fundamentalist maxim: love the sinner, hate the sin. Have you heard this? Yeah. Well, she said that this is fundamentalist maxim which is unlawful. Of course, there are some questions in these statements that we can discuss theologically if it's totally correct, but if we are not allowed to make distinction of being and doing, this is person and acts, how could a criminal court even function? So no matter what the judgment is, it does not take away human dignity of any criminal. It's just we are addressing the acts. How you can raise children if you cannot, show them love and rebuke the acts? I mean, this is against the common sense. Maybe some of you and many of you have read a great book by Carl Trueman, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. Anyone here? I highly recommend this. It's a great book. It had on my table, but I read it on the way here, and I said, wow, I should have read it much earlier. But that explains kind of the background of the whole thing, why we are where we are at now. And he points out that our culture, and he's talking about your culture, but that includes Europe as well. It has become the question of psychological happiness. So if we reject homosexual lifestyle, acts, then we deny the personality and identity of that person, because this is about the identity questions, as we know here. And if we deny identity, that comes to the question of dignity. So before we in Western world said that if something was done wrong, and that you threw a stone or broke a window or you hit the person and made a criminal act in that sense. But in this psychological happiness society, where the highest degree is the identity and sexual identity questions, which comes to mean dignity. So the words that are used, if you against the actions of homosexuals and lifestyle, they always are understood in the category of human dignity. So that's what the prosecutor was saying there, that we cannot say that it's a sin and shameful and it's not accordance with the natural order that you live in a homosexual relationships, because that automatically means denying the dignity of that human person. I'm sorry about my English, but are you following me here? And this is a huge change. So how can I, as a Lutheran bishop or any pastor, preach God, creation and fall, the law which is accusing and revealing our sin, and the gospel which forgives our sins? It's repentance and grace. Because if I'm always attacking your dignity, and that's why we are not, the discussion doesn't meet. And I mean, Carl Truman makes a great job there explaining what's the philosophical and historical background is that. Okay. Let's go on. In addition, prosecutor claimed that the Bible and its teaching does not give any legal ground to offend homosexuals, no more than raping, killing, and putting people into slavery. So I, as a Lutheran pastor, she was using PowerPoint there, and she took the fifth book of Moses, chapter 20, about the war laws, how the people of Israel attacked to the promised land, and they said they have to kill everybody and take the land. And then she was asking, that, well, you can argument on the basis of Bible killing, raping, and putting people to slavery. What do you say about that? I said that, I'm used to hear bad theology, but this is Sunday school stuff. This is confirmation class stuff. And I had to say in my final thoughts that I'm astonished to hear this level of amateurish interpretation of Bible was taking the place of the courtroom. And it has nothing to do that historical for one people and historical setting. It has nothing to do with the created order and the teaching of St. Paul's in the New Testament. Or have you heard about a church that rejects homosexual lifestyle but are promoting rape, killing, and slavery? So, what can one answer? When I was asked, do you follow the Finnish law or the words of the Bible? My duty as a bishop is to teach privately and publicly, no matter what the cost is, the faith that was once delivered to the saints. However, I do not have to choose between the Finnish law and the Bible, because our constitution guarantees freedom of speech and religion. Nothing in our teaching is defaming or hate speech. It can and will offend some people. And what biblical teaching is not offending? I'm offended if my sin is revealed. You are offended. I hope that everybody is offended here when they hear the accusing word of the law. But in a free society, offending speech must be tolerated. So we argued that the Finnish law and the Bible is not contradicting these particular issues. Of course, the Finnish law accepts same-sex marriage, which Bible does not. But the problem here was the prosecutor's ideological and pseudo-theological interpretation of our pamphlet. So the prosecutor was trying to silence and criminalize common Christian teaching on marriage and sexual ethics. So what was the decision of the court? On the 30th March 22, the Helsinki District Court dismissed all the charges against us. Yeah. Usually there's one judge, but in some cases 3. We had 3 judges and the decision was unanimous. The court also ordered the prosecution to pay more than 60,000 euros, $65,000 in legal costs. This was a great victory, not only for us, but even to our opponents. Free speech concerns everyone, especially minorities. Because if you are in majority, you usually don't have to have clear laws on free speech. But if you are a minority and dislike minority, the last barrier is to have the rule of law and clear. So it was really victory for all our society. The court decision said, although our writing can be offensive, there must be room even for offensive speech. But the story continues. Little bit we know there. 30th of April, so 3 weeks ago, state prosecutor officially filed appeal. Prosecutor argued that the district court had not understood correctly and objectively our texts, which are homophobic. And if you think about it, prosecutors saying that they have the objective understanding, so why do we go to the court? I mean, no. I'm near the altar, so I try to keep only holy thoughts here, Unlike in many other legal systems, under Finnish law, the prosecutor can appeal not guilty verdicts all the way to the Supreme Court of Finland. So there are next step and possibly a third step. And if we lose, we can take the case to the European Court of Human Rights. So this case has continued for 3 years and will most probably last several more. So here we are waiting to be summoned by the appeal court, and we are prepared to go all the way. So why this case matters? Why on earth are you listening this case? What's the sad story about Finland? No, well, it matters. First of all, it matters legally. There's much at stake. We deal here with the fundamental rights of freedom of speech and religion and how they relate to discrimination acts. And this is the first case when a religious speech is at trial in Finland. Not the last one, at least not in Europe. On European Union level, there is a growing tendency to bring up these cases. So Alliance Defending Freedom, which legally is helping us, consider this to be their priority case in Europe. Because this can give a precedent verdict for future cases. So, God willingly, we can get a stronger verdict because there is a tendency to expand hate speech regulations in Europe all the time. And we know that censorship is detrimental to any country, and it causes only more system of surveillance. You have to hire more people to handle these cases, more monitoring the speech. And if you think that you make the society a freer, better place, no, it causes more tension in a society. And I already see in our case that the respect for authority and the rule of law is diminishing. And if these kinds of persecutions will occur in the future, also it will. My sister, I have 2 sisters, they're both lawyers, so I preach gospel loud and hard. And the other one, she's a judge in an appeal court, and her husband is also. And she said, not because she's my sister, elder sister, taking care of the little brother. No, she said, as a lawyer, I'm ashamed. And think about if one good outcome that could be of this case, that there's discussion in our society that this legislation should be clarified. Because if you break the law, you should know that you are breaking the law. It's that kind of the thing. If I bring some unlawful items to US, I should be shaking in the custom. But if police inspector cannot understand what hate speech is, how can ordinary citizen, a stupid Lutheran pastor, understand what hate speech is? So it's really unclear legislation in this case. So you see how vague it goes. If legal experts do not know, how can an ordinary citizen? So secondly, this case is a good mirror of the cultural shift that has occurred. When I was born long ago, 1970s, Finland was still a Christian nation. We have a blue cross in our flag, and it meant something. After the rise of the modern self, Carl Truman, and the sexual revolution, which was kind of the result of that, and then the secularism in Finland, it cut its Christian roots and became neutral and diverse on religious matters. When we published the pamphlet, it was part of the lost battle against the tide of gender ideology. So in the church, it was the battle of women's ordination. It became the idea of that equality means that the women are equal only if they can do the same thing as men. So you forgot the created order and the teaching of St. Paul. And we lost that battle. And then it came to the society, the same-sex marriage, and it meant that this psychological happiness, it's only for adults, and they do what they want, and no matter what the outcome is for children and so forth. Now, well, this pamphlet was part of that struggle. And however, now we realize that we live not only in a post-Constantinian, but post-Christian age, meaning that Christian teachings are less and less understood and accepted in the public arena, but vehemently opposed. Basic teaching on human dignity and Christian sexual ethics are considered, and this is the shift, not only old-fashioned, weird, but morally evil. So we are against equality, choice, and progress, which are the big words of our days. So we are, in a way, dangerous for the society because we are evil. We cause rainbow youth to commit suicides. I mean, that's the kind of the idea. So we should be silenced in the society. So we can see now tendencies towards totalitarianism. In the words of Rodrère, who wrote, maybe some of you have read the book, Live Not by Lies. If you haven't, it's a book worth reading. He says that totalitarianism is a state in which nothing can be permitted to exist that contradicts a society's ruling ideology. Ruling ideology. And what is the ruling ideology? It's a gender ideology. Dre speak about soft totalitarianism, not hard like in South Korea, where they come and put you in the camps, but soft in Western countries when all aspects of life, media, business, education, universities, culture, courtrooms, army, and the church bodies are taken over by the same ideology or pseudo-religion that suffocates differing opinions and viewpoints. Is this happening in the US? Yes, it is. So, I want to underline here, Finland is a free democratic country. As you see, I'm a patriot. and in a democratic procession decided to apply last Wednesday for NATO in fear of Russia. We have over 900 miles border. Russia, a totalitarian superpower next to us. So we are a democratic country, thanks be to God. And I see no dangers of totalitarianism on political level. However, we see how gender ideology pushes our society towards that direction by controlling thoughts, the school system, language, non-binary language, and speech, the restrictions, like this case. Professor from Austria, Altin von Geusau, referring to Hannah Arendt, great philosophian of 20th century, that there are 5 steps towards totalitarianism. First is fear, second, soft exclusion, third, justification of exclusion, fourth, hard exclusion, and 5, then extermination, social or physical. And let me stop here. First is fear. We see that this kind of court case has a chilling effect in society. No matter what the outcome of the court case is, people and Christians are more afraid to express their views publicly. What can I put to YouTube? What can I say in a class? Like my wife is teaching 6th graders in a public school. We have an excellent public school system. And they had talked about Bible and original sin. I mean, we have still some Christian tradition in the school system. And they had talked about sin. And then the headmaster a few days later took her aside and said that there's, parents are ringing me that you are saying that homosexuality is sin. Well, she could have said that, but she hadn't said that. But now the parents were accusing that she was brainwashing their children, although she had not said that. Well, some kid had most probably found on some web page, me and my wife, you found our picture there, and said that, okay, she is against homosexual lifestyle. And this is happening to teachers in many places. I talk regular basis. They are fearful. So, out of fear, many people, pastors, reporters, teachers, professors, businessmen, they restrict their speech. And this is self-censorship. Who wants to go through such punitive court process? If they can go after Member of Parliament and a bishop, they can certainly come after me. So we have said again and again that now is high time to use the freedom of speech or lose it. So we need to hear the words of the Lord, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. So after the fear comes secondly the soft exclusion. That means a certain group are still considered part of the society, but their status has been downgraded. I'll give you an example. Mrs. Räsänen was invited to family TV show called Masked Singers. They sing with songs with masks. She's an excellent singer, by the way. It has nothing to do with politics or religion, but it's pure entertainment, if you like that kind of entertainment. However, there was a strong reaction and outrage by many commentators when it was found out that Mrs. Räsänen was there. She should not have been invited because of her opinions are hateful and her presence in the TV shows causes unsafety among viewers. They said, how can you call this hateful person to the TV show which is meant for family? And somebody joked that, should there be R-rated, violence, coarse language, Mrs. Räsänen? So, there have been occasions when even Christian groups have cancelled the invitation. Thank you for letting me speak here. because she was not declared non-guilty, as if she and we were guilty before even the verdict. So we want to disassociate you, because although you might not be hateful, you signal hateful attitudes. So we can gather freely among ourselves, but because we are intolerant people, we should not be tolerated in the public arena. And I just give you this example. I mean, she's a member of parliament and she has a big pulpit in the society, and you cannot kick out member of parliament. She's not silenced, but the message has been given by the legal system, and it has been already received. The third one is justification of the exclusion. This means that academic research and expert opinions are used through vast media coverage to underpin the propaganda of fear and the subsequent exclusion of specific group. A few examples in our case. Some bishops and biblical scholars from the university have publicly criticized how we do not interpret Bible in a responsible and a proper manner, as if our theological stance on marriage was something new, or it was unbiblical, or even un-Lutheran. Theological Secretary of the Archbishop wrote in an article that we are part of international right-wing anti-gender operation. Give me a break. So, these three steps I can see that have been taking place. Maybe they are baby steps, but they are clearly discernible in our culture. So the fourth step is hard exclusion. The group that is now proven to be cause of the society's problems and current impasse is subsequently excluded from civil society as a whole and becomes rightless. Think about if we lose this case. I represent a small church, and then the bishop is a criminal. Does it mean that all our pastors and the congregation are supporting criminal activities? All our church buildings, we do not have them, but our worship community places put the sign, criminals gather here. So, what happens if we do not take the text from the website? Do we get more fines? Another legal case, more fines? Or do we get finally maximum penalty for hate speech, 2 years in jail? I would have never expected that, but I mean, that is a reality. And the fifth step is extermination, and social or physical. The excluded group is forcibly ejected from society, either by any participation in society being made impossible. Should the big companies refuse us to use credit cards or banking system because we represent hateful thoughts which are against their values? And so forth. Thank God we are not there, unlike many of our brothers and sisters in totalitarian countries, which are really suffering this. But I must say that my eyes have been opened to realize that someday, even in Finland, you may face jail time for your Christian beliefs. For me, this has not primarily been a legal or cultural battle, but a spiritual one. To face opposition in this world, to be ridiculed and even persecuted, hasn't been something uncommon, but normality in the life of the church. New Testament was written by persecuted Christians to persecuted Christians. As Dr. Martin Luther has stated, bearing cross is mark of the true church. And this is what Christ himself endured and what he has promised to us. In that particular book, Rod Rare raises, in his opinion, the kind of the greatest challenge for American Christians. And he says that the greatest challenge in the congregations is that how Christians are prepared to suffer for the sake of Christ. Because there's so much wealth and there has been so much peace and the society is all about psychological well-being and safety. And that's a good question that I ask my pastors and congregations. Are we prepared for that somehow? Do we see that that's the normal thing if you look church history? That's the normality. And that's what is promised in this century. If past century there was more martyrs than ever before counted together. And we know that we go to the end. So this century actually should be more martyrs than the previous century. And I'm not talking about mathematics, but you see that we have to open our eyes to face these realities. So we confess the order of creation, the connection of mind and body. And this is a big thing, that you cannot separate sex and gender. Mind and body belongs together. And it has deep other meanings also. And the gospel of Christ is at stake. Mrs. Räsänen writes in this booklet like this: the church is guilty of discrimination against homosexuals if they are not allowed to hear the full truth of the Word of God. And that is never harming people. Our Creator never harms, which includes both the law and the gospel. So I, as a Lutheran pastor, would discriminate those people if I'm silenced about what God wants to speak of their sin and especially the grace. Because if their sin is not revealed, why do they need the forgiveness of sins, the cleansing blood of Christ Jesus? So it's about gospel. And we all need our broken sexuality to hear the law and the gospel, the forgiveness of sins. And I know that this court case, like I imagine 2004, this modest little pamphlet, it serves the good purposes of our good Lord. So this is so amazing that it has been His plan all the time. And I'm thankful for the opportunity in public confess Christ and His good gifts. And I've been deeply touched, also during this trip here in US and in many, many countries, that so many, I would say hundreds of thousands of people have been praying for us, our church and our country, and hopefully for also the prosecutor general. And open up opportunities like to be with you tonight. Think about it. I wouldn't be here otherwise. So, many have asked you, how are you doing? It has been a lot of extra work and hours. It has been tiresome and sometimes stressing. But I have had on my mind joy and gratitude. Christ Jesus is good, merciful, and faithful, even to me, to His poor servant. So let me conclude with the words of St. Peter. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as thought something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when His glory is revealed. Thank you so much for listening. Okay. Pastor will lead the discussion, so.
Yeah, we've got a question here. Microphone. Could you use that?
All right. I don't march around with a banner that says sinner, but people in the Bible point at me and say, I am one. Now,
Then we are two, at least two here.
it's true.
Yes, it is.
I'm addicted to it.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I don't want to question other people that march around and say they are LGBTQ, and the Q stands for queer. And I'm just wondering if they go with that banner, queer, then are they calling it upon themselves that this is something different than we were made to be? It's more a question than a comment, but that's how I see some of my friends that tend to have tendency toward homosexuality, and they don't want to change. Maybe they're addicted to it too, but I think the queer business is just a word. But for me, it means out of the ordinary.
Yes.
It's a non-normal thing.
Yes. 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 So they talk about heteronormative society, and when hetero means that we have man and a female, and that it has been in all cultures throughout the history. But now it's becoming queer normative in that sense that you can separate the mind and body, sex and gender, and it's not only about sin here. The question that's coram deo in front of God. Our sin is revealed, but it's the question how we do understand marriage in itself. And in traditional Christian understanding, like I said, it's the triple bond, that one man and one woman is joined together for lifelong marriage, and God willing they will receive children and raise those children and so forth. So there's this triple bond unity, and it's especially for the sake of the children because they need mom and dad. And of course, we know that sometimes it's not possible. But homosexuals' marriage or living style defines the marriage in a way that unseen in human history. That it drops out children totally. It's only about the will and the desires of two adults, about their feelings and their romantic feelings, their sexual feelings. And now that defines the concept of marriage in a new way. And that's the breakdown of all our culture, because culture is based in the family and the society is, that's the backbone in church and it's in society. So this new definition and understanding of marriage is the detrimental cause here also.
You mentioned that much of this discussion was around the dignity of humankind, or treating someone with human dignity.
Yes.
And so that was on the homosexual level. How do they feel about human dignity when it comes to the unborn?
Well, that's a good question, and I know that we haven't dealt with that particular issue. Of course, we have brought up in our teaching that the human dignity is from the moment of conception till the very last end. And I must once again express my admiration to Mrs. Räsänen that she has fought fiercely in the Parliament against pro-life and also anti-euthanasia progress. And we marched last fall together in the March for Life, first time ever in Helsinki.
Bishop, could you talk to us a little bit about what the mission church in Finland is like, and how that came to be, and how it can be supported, and things like that?
Okay, thank you. So I'm the bishop of the Mission Diocese of Finland. Christianity came in Middle Ages through East and West, and then we adopted the Lutheran Reformation, and Finland became, we were part of Sweden till 1809. We were 100 years part of Russia. In 1970 we gained independence. So it was by the law you had to be Lutheran in Finland till 1917. Well, there were some Greek Orthodox then, so we have a long, strong Lutheran heritage. And unfortunately then, from 1960 now 1970s, especially among the university teaching became very liberal in its teaching, like Bible bashing. And that went through the clergy to the congregations. And like I said, there was a big struggle of question of women's ordination, because that was the equality question. And the point was that you cannot have in a church different understanding of equality than in society, because I'm all for equal. I know that I have two sisters that are much cleverer than I am, and so it's not about equality. It's that who God is placing to serve, and it's long answer. And there was a big fight for decades about what's the direction, and we were a small minority there. And then women's ordination was accepted, and that spread all over the congregation. And what is the reaction if in this congregation, if you oppose women's ordination, I know that LCMS does, that they would stand a female pastor here. Could you come to the service? No. You cannot be part of that which Word of God denies. I'm sorry if I'm offending now somebody, but that's what's our understanding. So we had to leave our own home congregations. We were homeless. Where to go? And so year 2000, I started with 20, 30 people. My wife was playing piano, and my mom was making the coffee, and it was almost family enterprise. So we started in downtown Helsinki, a small congregation, and it was not to wage a kind of only a war, but to have a place for our children to be part of to live around these gifts of Christ here. So eventually I was defrocked from the ministry in the Evangelical Lutheran Church and several others, and we have formed then the Mission Diocese as a Lutheran church body. And it has grown from one congregation, and now 40 plus five missions, and it's all over the Finland. And we are last year declared pulpit altar fellowship with Lutheran Church-Missouri Synod. And we are part of the International Lutheran Council, which consists of over 7 million Lutherans in 5 continents, and we are part of that Lutheran family. So we are the remnant. I'm not saying Mrs. Räsänen is still part of the established church, and they are good, faithful Christians there. But we are the remnant, and try to be faithful in our mission and our confession. You can check on our website. It's www.lhpk.fi, and we have got English-speaking pages. And if somebody wants to support our work, there's also PayPal possibility also. Does that answer your question?
Any other?
How would you encourage young people, young Lutherans, to stand up, especially in school as we go off to college? Should we stay silent and listen what is our place? Should we speak up? What would you say?
Oh, too difficult question, but it's a great one. Thank you. I have got 4 children, and 2 of them are in the university at the moment. So it comes to the father's heart. I think there's 2 ditches that you must avoid. First is that you start to adapt to the culture, and the other one is that you only complain. You're whining. Is that a good word? I don't know. But you have to understand what is going on in the culture, and then you have to mark your limits, or that I'm not going across that line, because there's all the time there's a pressure that you push the line forward, this and this way. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Rodriguez is referring to him, that book, the name Live Not by Lies. And Solzhenitsyn says that of course you cannot maybe change the society, like in a totalitarian country, Soviet Union, but you can decide that you do not live by lies yourself, that you do not go along with that. I was talking Fort Wayne just with the woman who was in the high business world, and there's an enormous pressure she's telling me about to go with all kind of this rainbow woke things going on, but she just puts her limits there. And then if you are forced to go above those limits, then you leave. I mean, that's the place where you confess your faith and say like that. And then it depends about your calling and also your personality. Are you more silent, or you want to fight? I didn't look for this fight, like I told you. This is nothing courageous here. I was just put to the place. So you don't have to seek for the cross. God gives the cross for you to carry. Is this any helpful? Thank you.
Back to your trial. The accusers, as well as the judges, so to speak, do you have any idea what their faith is? Do they have any? Do you have any idea of the makeup of their religious upbringing, that they could accuse you and put forth all these accusatory statements? Most probably they are nominally Lutherans. But I think, according to my understanding of society and how God works, I don't care if they are good Christians or not. I just want them to follow the law. And I think the law is clearly on our side in this matter. And that's how society works. And somebody asked me a few days ago, do I think is the prosecutor general and the state prosecutor, are they representing majority or minority? And that has been my question, because so far I have thought that our juridical system is not any ideologically driven, but it stays with the facts and with the law. And I think still the majority is very, very, very professional. But I know, and I don't want to go to the personalities, but I know the Prosecutor General, it's well known that this case has a family, how should I put it? There are some issues in her family that reflects on this case. Let's say like that. So we are not, we are all human beings, no matter what our position is, and that's, you are right there, that it affects also our decisions.
Can you clarify the appeal to the European Union? Is it both parties who could appeal if it goes that far, or?
I have understood that it goes from district court to the appeal court and then the Supreme Court.
You must always have the permission to go to the next step. It's not automatically. But only, state cannot take it to the European Court of Human Rights, but only then the accused ones. So if we lose, we can take even to the next step.
Okay.
And I was in Vienna a month ago. There was a Alliance Defending Freedom. Is that the well-known organization here? They had a big gathering here, excellent people from different denominations. And they are really worried on the European level where is it going? Because there's all kind of committees and European values that they are pressing to the European countries, and we should stick to the Constitution and the basic freedoms. But these values of equality and so forth, they become kind of the eyeglasses through which everything else is seen. And there's a big legal battle going on the top level all the time. As I don't know, maybe in U.S. Supreme Court nominations as well.
Take one more question, please.
Thank you, Bishop. I was wondering, as Christians of different denominations and traditions around the world face more hostility, what do you feel confessional Lutherans can contribute to the church around the world that is unique in terms of our ability to stand up to this hostility and endure in the face of hardship and persecution?
Well, as Lutheran, we are well known for our clear gospel of Christ, forgiveness of sins and justification. And I hate to talk about legal and social issues. I want to preach the gospel of Christ. I mean, and Mrs. Räsänen, I mean, she brings in the public media when she's interviewed, she always brings that to the Christ and the forgiveness of sins. I mean, that's just, wonderful, wonderful. I think that this is a level that we should cooperate very much with different denominations as well, because the question of freedom of religion and speech, that affects everybody. And I'm glad that my eyes have been opened to many contexts from different denominations who share the same struggles and in different issues. I'll give you an example. I met Canon Tom, Roman Catholic, from Scotland. And I don't want to go this COVID discussion here, it might be heated. But think about, he has a church capacity is 1,200 people, so it's a big church. And in Scotland, they were refused to let one single person in to pray in the church and not to have any services. But they could keep the food co-op in the church open because the COVID restrictions. And he took that case with Protestant churches around there and said, I mean, that this is incredible, that we are not, accepting this. We accept restrictions, like in Finland we had 20 people, we had even 10 people. Our pastors had 6 services per Sunday for 10 people, because that was the restriction. And we can go with that. But to close totally and then let anything else, many things in society be opened, I mean, that goes against our basic rights. And he won that case. And so we face these questions more and more, at least in Europe, because in Europe, which is very secular, much more than US, nowadays Christian faith and practice is seen as non-essential in society. Think about previously years, it was government paid, and still actually is paying for military, the chaplains, for the hospitals, called the chaplains, the pastors there, because when you face death or you're in danger, you need spiritual care. But the COVID revealed totally that nowadays, church is seen totally non-essential for the society. And that it can be closed and it doesn't do any harm. So you see the shift of the role of any Christian church in society. I don't know if that's in America, but in Europe that is very clearly the case. And that's why we have to fight for the freedoms in public arena.
You had mentioned Carl Truman.
Yes.
And he is a professor at Grove City in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Is he Presbyterian or I don't know?
I'm not sure his leanings, but I just wanted to let you know and let the people here know that a simplified version of his book has just come out.
Okay.
And I actually just purchased it today.
Oh.
And it's called A Strange New World, and it comes with a Bible study, a video, comes with a video guide and also a Bible study video guide and also a written study, but it's, I'm told that the full book is a little bit heady.
No, that's a little bit heavier.
It's a simplified version of that for ordinary people.
Yeah.
So
very good. Thank you for.
Just gonna alert you to that. But to close, we welcome the bishop from Finland. We wanted to give him a present, and we couldn't give him a good Finnish sauna while he was here. So we've got something else for him, which is a Finnish hymn and a Finnish tune. So we're gonna pass that out now, and our individuals here will pass that out, and our organist Gabriel, I'll have one too, and pass one to him too. I'll get one.
Okay, thank you. Must be very good.
So if
Oh, wow.
afterwards, we welcome you for a light reception in our narthex, and just a little few things that you can take with you, or stay and talk with those who are gathered. But we'll close here with the hymn, "O Sing My Soul Your Maker's Praise." As you look at the bottom, we have the biblical references, and also the hymn tune is named Finland, a traditional Finnish melody. So we're going to go out with a little Finland as a good present to our bishop. So if you'd all stand, if you would, and we'll have the organist play through it, and then we'll give it our best shot as we work through it.